Hello and welcome back to my channel, and in this video we are going to be making from start to finish Maurice the cat here. So if you're new here, I'm Bea and I teach you to make your own adorable miniature versions of your pets out of felt. So don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to follow along and learn more. I will be uploading a new make along every month to make a different cat. So don't forget to watch the equipment video, which I've done prior to this, which shows you the materials you need as well. This is just the making itself, so I will link that video in description. Did just forget to mention that you will also need a pencil or a pen of some sort, so I've got that here. And we are just going to get started now. So I have got my pattern printed, which again I will link that in the description. So the first thing we're going to do is we just want to cut out the templates ready to go. Just get that paper out of the way. So I have cut my templates, and you will have two templates in total. We have the body piece and the head. The reason I suggested to have a pen or pencil handy is that I find it a lot easier to just draw around the template rather than pin and cut it that way. I just find that allows me to get it a bit more precise, and I just find it a bit more of a smoother process personally. But if you would prefer, you can use your pins and pin them like that and then cut around it that way. So it's up to you, it's a preference. So that's my body piece. We just need one of the head piece, so all the templates are labeled with how many you need. Just going to check if I can fit that on the edge. I think it can just squeeze in there, so I'm going to draw around that one as well. And then we are just going to go in and cut around our felt like so. Now you want the edges to be as neat as possible. However, it doesn't matter too much because to an extent, when you stitch around the edge of your cat, that will tidy it up a little bit. So you want your pieces to be equal, so the front and the back are the same. Except for that, it doesn't matter too much, so don't worry too much about that part. So just cut around the tail. And these smaller parts, like the feet, for example, are when I find personally pinning the templates a little bit more challenging because it kind of folds and moves, and I just find I can get it a bit more precise when I do it this way and draw around the pieces first. So it's completely up to you which way you do it. I'm just going to cut that head out. There we go. I'm just going to pop that on there. So that's my 3 pieces. So I'm just going to trim the tail slightly, as can you see where the back is kind of overlapping? I've made them slightly different. This doesn't matter too much, but just so they're relatively the same, give us a nice neat finish. Right, so we've got our pieces cut out. I'm going to put one of these body pieces is going to be the back piece, so I'm going to put that to one side for now. So I just need my singular body piece, which is going to be my front, and also the head, which is also going to be the front. So I've got that ready, and I'm just going to pin towards the bottom because our face will be here, so we don't want the pin to be in the way, but I'm just going to pin them together so that they stay. So that's the first step, and now we are ready to start stitching, so I will come back for that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply map out the face with my pencil. So I'm just going to draw it on lightly and give him a little smiley face, like so. So it's kind of faint, but it just gives me a little bit of a guideline. Alternatively, what you can do is, in our instructions, we have got a embroidery template, and there is a separate YouTube channel there's a separate YouTube video on my channel for how to use this if you would like to do that. And the way that is done is you will trace it, transfer the paper onto the design and stitch through it that way. So it's up to you whether you would like to do it freehand or follow that. I like to give both options. But I've got my face drawn here, so we are ready to start stitching. So I'm going to take you through everything. So we're going to start by setting up the thread. So I've got my embroidery floss here. I am using DMC. You don't have to use this, but I would recommend using a nicer quality just because it will be easier to separate the embroidery strands, and it will just give you a nicer finish and be nicer to stitch with. So got a nice new skein here. I'm going to cut off about 50 centimeters. And then if I show you closely, you will see that this is made up of 6 strands. So what we're going to do is we are going to just use 2 because that gives us a bit of a thicker line to do the detail, but it's still fine enough to stitch with and get a bit more precise. So I'm just going to gently pull those away. And again, this is when it makes it a lot easier if you've got nice quality thread. It just makes it easier to separate the strands. And my cat helper is just coming here. Yeah. So I've got my 2 strands ready, and I'm going to tie a knot in one end, like so. I'm going to do 2 just to be safe. And that is ready. And then the other end, I'm going to thread my needle in. So as I said in the equipment video, I am just using like a standard household needle. You don't need anything fancy. It's more so just, I like a nice fine one because it's just sharper to go through the felt and just gives me a nicer stitch. But the only requirement really is just that you need an eye big enough to fit 2 strands of embroidery floss in. So obviously if you had a really fine one, you wouldn't be able to. So I just buy a standard pack of household needles and use one from that, if I'm totally honest. You don't need anything special for felt. That's why I like it. I find it nice and accessible as a craft. So we've got our thread ready to go, and we are going to start by making a single stitch for one of the eyes. So I'm going to bring my needle up through both the head and the body, and I'm going to pull it tight so the knot is on the other side. And then I'm going to make a stitch the length that I want my eye to be. So I'm going for a nice big eye. So I'm going to pull that and make my first stitch like so. And then I'm just going to keep making stitches the same length close next to it to get the eye the size I want it to be. So again, like so. And just going to do a third there. And I think that's the size I want it. So there is one eye. And then I'm just going to repeat that with the other eye by making a stitch and just building it up the same as I've just done with the other eye. So keeping the stitches the same length and close together like so. And we have both our eyes done there. So we're just going to do the nose now in the same way but horizontally. So we're going to make a singular stitch, the width we want the nose to be, and then I'm just going to build that up by keeping the stitches close together. And now that I've got the nose the size I want it, one more stitch I think, I'm now going to stitch the mouth. So there is a separate video for this on my channel because we're going to be doing a back stitch, but I will show you on this too. It's just if you wanted any extra practice. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with a single stitch and we're going to put it into the nose so it's joined. And then we are going to do another stitch that goes into the point where the last stitch ended, like so. And that's going to make it a continuous line, which is a back stitch. But this is slightly more complicated because we're doing it on a curve for the mouth. So again, I'm going to do a stitch into that point again. And then we're just going to make a little curve each side to make him smiley. So you can even grumpy if you'd like. And the trick here is to just make as small stitches as you can, which will allow you to get a nice small curve. And again, I'm just going to make small stitches into the point where the last stitch finished, and then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. And don't worry too much about it being really neat here. I think it just adds to the charm and gives them more character. I have people make these at my workshops a lot, and I think that's the lovely thing, is that they all look different. So there's his cute little face, and I'm going to tie a knot in the thread like so. And we have his cute little face, and now we're going to stitch his paws. So again, I've got 2 strands of black thread. I've tied a knot in one end, and I'm just going to make small single stitches on each paw. So I'm going to do 3 so that they kind of look like cat claws. And I'm going to repeat that on the other paw as well. And then I'm just going to finish that thread and restart it again for the back leg because it won't reach across there. So we're just going to tie a knot again, trim the thread, and then again tie a knot and start it on the back leg. And we're just going to do the same and make 3 more single stitches for his back paw, like so. So he has his cute claws ready to go. So we have got our black details stitched, and I'm just going to take the pin out now because it's attached with the stitching that's secured it together, the head and the body. And what I'm going to do now is his little rosy cheeks here. So I'm just going to do the same as I did with the black. I'm going to get off about 50 centimetres of pink floss. And again, I'm going to use 2 strands. So I'm just going to separate those off. And because it's nice quality thread, you should be able to separate the strands quite easily, which is another reason why I would recommend using nice quality thread. I'm going to thread my needle up. I've tied a knot in one end, the same as I did with the black. And I'm going to bring up the needle just under the eye here, like there. Bring it up and pull it tight so the knot secured it. And then I'm going to make the same with the eye. I'm going to make a stitch but horizontal, and that's going to be the length I want the cheek to be, like so. So I've got a single stitch there, and again I'm just going to do another stitch next to it, the same length, till my cheek is the size I'd like it to be. And I think I'm just going to do a third. And then I'm going to do the other side as well, like so. And I'm going to do one more in the middle there, like so. So there's the cheeks, and again I'm just going to tie a knot on the inside as close to the stitching as I can. And now we're going to do the grey detail. So again, same process. I've got my grey thread and I'm going to get off about 50 centimetres and separate off 2 strands, thread it in the needle and tie a knot at one end. Like so. I'll just separate the strands. Try not to get tangled. Like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a few stitches on his body in grey to give a little bit of texture to make it look like he's nice and fluffy. So I'm just going to do that freehand and just make small stitches where I fancy them to make him look like he's long haired and got some fluff on him. So I'll put another one there, I think. And if you'd like to, you could mark this on in pencil before. So I'll do a little bit of, try and be quite loose here and don't worry too much about being neat, but I'm just going to kind of think where I might like some little fur markings to be and map them out there. And then I'm just going to stitch them using single stitches. And as you go between stitches, try not to pull it too tight because you don't want the felt to get kind of scrunched up with the thread. You want to keep it nice and flat and smooth. I've done a few there. And then I'm going to put one on his tail, I think. Like so. I think one more up there maybe. So if I show you what I mean when I say to try and keep it flat, obviously the thread on the inside is, where I've gone across. If I was to pull that too tight, it would then fold the felt up. If you wanted it really neat, you could tie and restart the thread between stitches. But for speed, and I don't think it's necessary as long as you keep it flat, I'm just going to use the same thread. Like so. I think I might just add one more up on the leg there. Okay, so that's done, and I'm just going to again tie a knot and finish that thread off. And we are almost ready to stitch him together. The last step is to just do his whiskers. So I'm just going to use one strand of thread this time so that the line is a bit finer to show his whiskers. So I'm using my black, and I've separated off one strand. And I'm just going to tie a knot in the thread again, thread my needle, and I'm just going to make single stitches the length of each whisker, like so. So there's one whisker, it's just a single stitch, like so. And I'll do a third one there. And then I will do that on the other side as well. So I'm just going to do whiskers on his ears as well, because he's a long haired boy. So I'm going to do some up the top here as well. I think I'm just going to have one more on that side. And then I'm going to repeat the same on the other side, like so. Okay, let's tie that in a knot. Like I said before, don't worry what it looks like on the inside. I am typically quite a messy sewer, but that's why I like felt, is that it doesn't have to be really precise. It's very forgiving as a material, which is why it's perfect for a beginner crafter to have a go at sewing. So we have our front piece embroidered now, which is, we're ready to stitch him together. He's so cute. So I've got my back piece that I put aside, and I've got the front piece. I'm going to line them up like that. And now I am ready to attach my keychain, or if you're doing a hanger, this is when you will do it too. So I'm going to fold my ribbon or hanger in half, and because I'm using a keychain, I'm going to put that through first, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich it on the inside of the back piece with about 1 centimeter's overlap, like so. And then I'm going to place the front on top, lining up the edges, and I'm going to pin that in place. Might put it a little bit further. I'm going to pin that in place to secure it so that it's sandwiched together. So whatever you're using, if you're using a ribbon or a hanger, that's how you do that. You pin it so it's sandwiched on the inside, like so. And that will then be secured when you stitch it together. So now that we're ready to stitch him together, I'm going to get off a little bit longer of embroidery thread this time, and I'm going to separate off one strand again. So Just going to gradually pull it out. There we go. And I'm going to tie that in place. Like so. So it's got a nice secure knot in the end. And I'm going to thread my needle, and then I'm going to come back and we will stitch them together. So we're ready to stitch Maurice together, and I'm going to show you two options for stitching it. The way I'm going to do it is with a blanket stitch, and there is another video on my page which covers this in a little bit more detail, but I will show you on this video too. So I have my needle threaded with the knot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the needle up. I'm starting here because that's quite a nice place to start. For when you stuff it, you can then stuff it in the legs there. So I'm starting about here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the needle up from the inside of the top piece. So then when I pull it tight, the knot and the end of the thread is going to be sandwiched in the center there between the front and the back. And the first option, so I will be doing this with blanket stitch, but there's another option which is just an overstitch. So if you were going to do the overstitch, you would just come up where you want the thread to be, and that will be the end of your stitch, and you just pull that, and all it's done is it's simply done a stitch over, and you would just go round the edge like that. But because I'm doing a blanket stitch, I will show you that way, and there's just this, it's pretty much the same, but there's just an extra step. So you almost pull it tight like that, as if you were doing an overstitch, so you're bringing the thread up where you want the stitch to be, the length, and you just pop your thread through that loop before you pull it tight, and that will then give you a blanket stitch. So I'll show you the blanket stitch again. So I'm going to bring my needle up at the point where I want the stitch to be. I'm going to almost pull that tight, and just when there's this little loop, I'm going to pop the needle through there. Now I'm left-handed, so I don't know if this will look different if you're right-handed, but blanket stitch is a very common stitch for felt particular, so there will be lots of other tutorials online if you need to find it from the other way around. So again, I'm just going to go around the edge, and like so, just before I pull it tight, I'm going to push the thread through the loop like that. And we're just going to keep going like that. I've knotted my thread. There we go. I'm trying not to pull too tight, because then that means if I do get a knot in my thread, I can usually unpull it quite easily. And I'm just going to keep going around the corner of the ear. So I'm just going to keep stitching round like so, catching the loop as I go, and my stitches are about half a centimetre apart. So I'm just going to keep going. Make sure as I go any loose threads are tucked in, which I can just kind of use my needle to maneuver them inside. And I'm almost at the point where my hanger is, in my case a keychain, or maybe you're using a bit of ribbon for a hanger. Sorry, my cat wanted to be involved. So I'm almost at the point where the hanger is now, and what I'm going to do is when I get to there, I'm just going to keep stitching the same way, but through all the layers, like so. So it might be a little bit stiffer, and it takes a little bit of patience and care. I'm just going to keep stitching through. like so. And then I can just keep the blanket stitch. Okay. And then I can just keep going, and then my keychain is going to be secured then in the stitching. So I can take the pin out now and it's all secure. I'm going to show you the back as well. So I'm just going to keep stitching around the edge with my blanket stitch or your overstitch, whichever choice of stitch you're using. And I'm not quite at the point where I want to start stuffing yet, but I'm going to shortly start putting in a bit of stuffing as I go, and I will show you that too. I'm having to multitask right now because my cat is determined to be involved and is helping herself to everything on my desk. There she goes. She's a rescue cat and she's only a few weeks. We've only had her a few weeks, so she wants to be involved all the time. Okay. So I think I'm just going to keep going around the tail, and then when I get to the bottom of the tail, I'm going to start putting some stuffing in, because you want to kind of do it as you go, as a bit of a process. So you stitch a bit, stuff a bit. I like to do it as I go, just so you don't have to kind of awkwardly maneuver it into all the corners at the end. It's a bit easier to do it as you go in the more fiddly areas. So I think when I get to the end of this tail, I will have a nice little pocket ready to pop some stuffing in, like so. So I'm just going to leave my stitching. I'm not going to do anything with it because when I put some stuffing in, I will keep stitching. And I'm going to get some of my stuffing that I've got here. And I find the trick is to use a lot less and kind of build it up slowly. So I'm going to use really small amounts, pull it apart, which will stop it from kind of compacting too much and going lumpy. And then the reason I said to have a pencil or pen is you can use the non-writing end like so to just kind of gently push it in, and that will help you maneuver it a little bit. So I'm just going to pop it into the tail there, like so, a little bit more I think. So as you can see, I'm just using really small bits and I'm pulling it apart, and that will just make it a bit more kind of squishy. I think if you compact it in too much, it can go a little bit lumpy and it distorts the shape a little bit. So you don't want to use too much, and it's better to build it up as you go. So I've done the tail now, so now I'm just going to keep stitching, and then I'm going to do some more stuffing in a minute when I'm a little bit further around. So I'm just going around my foot. Again, I'm going to tuck in that loose thread there onto the inside so that it's nice and neat. Like so. And I think I'm going to go to the end of the belly there, and then I'm going to pop some more stuffing in because we're nearly getting to the end of our stitching now. So I've got to here and we've got a nice hole here now, so I'm just going to pop some more stuffing in. Again, I'm going to pull it all apart. I'm going to use my non-writing end of my pencil, and I'm just going to pop it in. And the good thing about felt is it is really forgiving, so you can kind of stretch it a little bit and kind of push it into the areas that you want to, like I'm going to do with the foot here. And it won't, provided you're using kind of good quality felt, it shouldn't stretch or warp. so it's quite forgiving to do this, which is what I like about it. So I'm going to keep popping it into the body. Like so. And I'm going to pop some into the head as well. And again, I'm just using small, so then I can push it into the ears there, and I'm just going to build it up as I go. Put some more in here. Like so. So I think I'm at a good point. I think if I put any more in, it might start warping. So I think I'm at a good point. It might start distorting the design when I say warping. Well, I've managed to put the needle through the keychain, so we'll get that untangled. And just pull that out. Put it down. There we go. So I'm going to rethread my needle. Okay. So now I'm just going to keep stitching around the edge, and I'm almost back at the point where I started now. And then I will show you how to finish your thread. And I'm just going to push it a bit more into the foot there. Like so. Because we want some chunky paws. Keep going. I think I might have room for one last bit of stuffing there. So I'm just going to leave, just before I finish, I'm just going to leave a slight hole, get a little tiny bit more. And then I'm just going to pop that in there, which might be tricky. There we go. Might be trickier then. I've made the hole slightly too small. There we go. It's okay, I got it in. Okay, so now I'm just going to finish my stitching. So you just want to stitch all the way around until you get to the point where you started. So I'm almost there now. Almost there. And then I'm doing my last stitch now, and I'm going to show you how I finish my stitching. This is maybe quite an unconventional way, but this is the way I find works best for me, and it's really secure. So what I'm going to do is I've done my last blanket stitch, which takes me up to the point where I started. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a number of stitches in the same place over and over like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my needle through the center of Maurice. So it's not coming out the back, I'm just pushing it right through the center, and I'm going to bring my needle out. And then what that does is it creates a long tail on the inside. So then what I can do, just get my scissors, is I can just snip that off, and that's inside there. And you have this long tail so that will prevent it from kind of unraveling. That's on the inside now. And we have our Maurice finished. So I'm going to go hang him on my bag. Let me know in the comments if that was helpful, if you enjoyed making it, and I will see you soon for the next tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe if you would like to learn more and join along with learning to make your own adorable pets with me. Okay.